Have you ever felt angry and had absolutely no idea why? Have you ever been overwhelmed by a fear that had no clear source, no logical explanation, no name? Have you ever sat with a grief so heavy it felt like it belonged to someone else, as if you were carrying a weight that was never actually yours? These are not random emotional malfunctions. According to the Gnostic tradition that Jesus knew, studied, and taught, from these three emotional states are not accidents. They are entry points. They are the precise frequencies that the forces the Gnostics called archons use to access, drain, and redirect your spiritual energy. Jesus spoke about these forces directly, not in parables designed to obscure, but in teachings preserved in texts that were later buried, burned, and removed from the canon. He named what was happening. He described the mechanism, and then he gave his closest disciples an Aramaic key, a specific sound and declaration, designed to shut those entry points down completely. That key is what this teaching is about. Stay until the end, because the protocol you will receive today is not theory. It is the exact practice Jesus transmitted to those he trusted with the deeper truth. To understand what Jesus was teaching when he addressed the forces behind human suffering, it is necessary to understand the Gnostic worldview that formed the living context of his ministry. The Gnostics, and there is substantial evidence that Jesus taught within and beyond this tradition, understood the material world as a realm governed by intermediate forces. These forces were not evil in the cartoonish sense that later theology would suggest. They were, more precisely, controlling. They were mechanisms of limitation, and they were called The word archon comes from the Greek. It means ruler, or one who governs. In the Gnostic cosmology that surrounded Jesus, the archons were understood as the administrators of the material realm forces, whose primary function was to keep human consciousness confined within the boundaries of the physical and the emotional, and therefore disconnected from its true divine origin. Jesus referenced these forces in multiple ways across the Gospels. When he spoke of the ruler of this world in the Gospel of John, he was not speaking metaphorically. He was using language his audience understood precisely. He was identifying a layer of reality that most people navigate without ever naming, a layer that operates not through dramatic supernatural intervention, but through something far more intimate and far more effective. It operates through your emotions. The archons, in the Gnostic teaching that Jesus engaged with and transformed, do not need to force you into anything. They do not need external coercion. They have access to something far more powerful, the interior landscape of your feeling life. And within that landscape, there are three specific emotional frequencies that function as open doors. Three states that, when sustained, keep a human being energetically available to be drained, redirected, and kept spiritually asleep. Jesus knew exactly what these three emotions were, and he taught his disciples not to suppress them, but to understand them as signals, and to respond with a precise spiritual authority. The first emotion the archons use as an entry point is fear. Not the healthy fear that signals genuine physical danger, but chronic, sourceless, ambient fear, the kind that lives in the background of your daily life as a low hum of dread, the kind that makes you hesitate before speaking your truth, before pursuing what you actually sense you are meant for, before stepping into the fullness of who you are. Jesus addressed fear more than any other emotional state across the Gospels. The instruction, "Do not be afraid," or in its Aramaic form, Elatidhal, appears in his teachings repeatedly and never as a simple reassurance. It appears as a command, a declaration of authority over a specific force that Jesus recognized as not merely psychological, but spiritually operational. The second emotion is anger, without resolution. This is not the righteous indignation that Jesus himself demonstrated in the temple. That anger carried clarity, purpose, and was quickly released. The anger the archons cultivate is different. It is the kind that loops, that replays the offense, that keeps you locked in a relational conflict or personal grievance long after the original event has passed. This looping anger consumes extraordinary spiritual energy, energy that was meant to move you forward but instead keeps you perpetually anchored to a wound. The third emotion is grief. Grief in its natural form is one of the most sacred human experiences. It honors love, it processes loss, it moves. But when grief stops moving, When it hardens into a permanent interior state of loss and lack, it becomes something else entirely. It becomes a frequency of absence, and that frequency of absence is precisely what the archons need to establish a sustained hold on a person's spiritual energy. Jesus saw all three of these states in the people who came to him, and his response was never to dismiss what they were feeling. The words of Jesus in Aramaic opened different pathways back to divine alignment. Each one represents a frequency capable of restoring something fragmented in human consciousness understanding. These frequencies is the first step, but mastering their vibration in your daily life is where the true miracle happens. Aramaic words carry a sound dimension that is deeply vibrational, and some of these pronunciations may reach your ears slightly differently depending on how they are rendered. To help you embody each frequency with precision, I created a collection of 5 sacred study guides, each one dedicated to a specific Aramaic declaration and its practice. Inside, you'll find the correct pronunciation, guided meditations, and daily activation rituals. The link is pinned in the comments. Your deeper transformation begins there. What Jesus did in the presence of people gripped by these 3 emotions was not what most religious teaching has described. He did not simply comfort them. He did not offer platitudes about endurance. He performed what might be understood, in the language of the Aramaic tradition he spoke from, as a spiritual interruption. He introduced a frequency so precisely calibrated to the divine origin of the person before him that the hold was simply displaced. This is the mechanism behind what the Gospels record as miraculous healings of emotional and spiritual suffering. When Jesus encountered the woman bent over for 18 years, a condition the text itself attributes to a spirit of infirmity rather than a physical disease, he did not treat her spine. He addressed the force. He spoke with authority into the spiritual dimension of her condition, and the physical reality reorganized itself in response. The Aramaic word Jesus used in contexts of spiritual authority over these forces was shbaqa, word that in its fullest sense means to release, to untie, to allow what has been bound to return to its natural state of freedom. Shbaq appears in the Lord's Prayer in its original Aramaic form, where it is traditionally translated as forgive. But forgiveness in the Aramaic understanding is not primarily a moral transaction. It is a release of energetic binding. It is the dissolution of the cord that keeps you attached to what is draining you. When Jesus spoke shbaq, he was not simply offering absolution. He was cutting the connection between the person's energy field and the archonic frequency that had established a hold through fear, through looping anger, or through calcified grief. He was, in the most precise spiritual sense, setting the captive free. If something in you is shifting as you receive this teaching, trust that movement. It is your original nature recognizing itself. The 5 sacred study guides were designed to walk beside you as that remembrance deepens, layer by layer, word by word, frequency by frequency. Each guide carries the full context of these sacred declarations, their sound, their meaning, and their power to dissolve what no longer belongs to you. The link is pinned in the comments. Your return to wholeness has a next step. The Gnostic texts that preserve the deeper layers of what Jesus taught, particularly the Gospel of Philip, the Gospel of Truth, and the Apocryphon of John, are remarkably consistent on one central point. The archons cannot create. They can only imitate and redirect. They have no original generative power. What they have is the capacity to take what already exists, your genuine emotions, your real capacity for love, for grief, for anger, and distort those energies into frequencies that serve their own sustaining mechanism. This is the crucial understanding that Jesus brought to his inner circle. Your emotions themselves are not the problem. Fear, in its original form, is sacred awareness. Anger, at its source, is divine discernment, the capacity to recognize what violates the sacred. Grief, in its pure state, is the measure of how deeply you have loved. The archons do not create these emotions. They corrupt them. They take what is alive and sacred and transform it into a loop, a trap, a drain. When Jesus instructed his disciples to be wise as serpents and innocent as doves, he was describing exactly this dynamic. The wisdom of the serpent, in the Gnostic tradition, is the ability to recognize the mechanism of the archonic system, to see the trap before you step into it, to feel the emotion and immediately distinguish between its sacred origin and its distorted form. The Aramaic word that Jesus consistently associated with this discernment was nuhra, light, but specifically the light of inner perception, the capacity to see what is operating in the invisible dimensions of your experience. Nura is the antidote to unconscious entrapment when you bring Nura, conscious, clear, spiritually empowered perception, to your emotional experience. The archonic distortion cannot sustain itself in the same way. There is a moment in the Gospel of Mark that illuminates everything taught in this video with extraordinary precision. Jesus is in the synagogue when he encounters a man with what the text calls an unclean spirit. The spirit, the archonic force operating through the man, immediately recognizes Jesus and speaks first. This is not incidental. It is the text's way of showing that these forces are aware. They are not sleeping. They know when a frequency of genuine divine authority is present. Jesus does not engage in dialogue with the force. He does not argue, negotiate, or explain. He speaks a single Aramaic command, SHTOQ, silent, followed by Fakmene, come out of him. 2 declarations, a sealing of the archonic voice, and then a release. The man is freed immediately, and the text records that everyone present was astonished, not primarily at the drama of the event, but at the authority. They had never heard anyone speak with that kind of direct power over invisible forces. This is the model that Jesus was establishing for his disciples, not as a unique miracle reserved for the Son of God alone, but as a demonstration of what becomes possible when a human being operates from their true divine origin. The authority Jesus exercised was not foreign to the people watching. It was the authority of the monad, the divine spark reasserting itself against the layer of archonic control that had accumulated over it. The Aramaic tradition teaches that every human being carries this same spark. Every human being has the same essential access to this authority. What differs is whether they know it and whether they know how to use it. Jesus spent his entire ministry demonstrating that knowing is available to everyone and teaching exactly how to access it. You have now received the understanding that Jesus brought to his innermost circle. You know what the 3 emotions are. You know the mechanism behind them. And now it is time to receive the exact protocol that Jesus taught for working directly with this knowledge, not as theology, but as lived, embodied, daily spiritual practice. This protocol has 3 movements, corresponding to the 3 emotions and the Aramaic declarations that address each one. Begin in stillness. Sit with your spine upright and your hands open on your lap, palms facing upward. This posture is not ceremonial. It signals openness to receive and willingness to release simultaneously. The first movement addresses fear. Place your attention in the center of your chest. Breathe slowly into that space. When you are ready, speak aloud the Aramaic declaration of Jesus, Elatitho. Do not be afraid. Speak it as Jesus spoke it, not as a request, but as a statement of authority. You are not asking fear to leave. You are declaring its hold, dissolved. Repeat it 3 times and feel the chest open with each repetition. The second movement addresses looping anger. Now bring to mind whatever situation, person, or wound you have been replaying. Do not analyze it. Simply hold it in your awareness. Then speak shbaq, the Aramaic word of release. Let what has been bound in you return to its free state. Say it once, slowly, and then release the image entirely. Do not hold Italiana. Let it go the way Jesus intended when he placed this word in the center of the prayer he taught. The third movement addresses grief that has stopped moving. Place both hands over your heart. Breathe. Acknowledge what you have lost. Name it silently or aloud. Then speak neurolight 3 times into the grief. You are not erasing what you have loved. You are illuminating it with the light of your divine origin, allowing the grief to complete its sacred movement rather than calcify into absence. Sit in silence for at least 2 minutes after the third movement. That silence is the integration. That is where the archonic hold dissolves and your original frequency reasserts itself. Jesus taught this not as a one-time cure, but as a daily practice, a way of beginning each day with your spiritual doors closed to what does not belong to you, and open only to what comes from the divine source, that has always been your true origin. Did you feel something shift today? Did these words touch something deeper in you? If they did, leave the word awakening in the comments. That is your confirmation that the light within you is moving. And when the light moves, it needs a path. Discover our complete collection of 5 sacred study guides created to carry your transformation beyond this moment. The link is pinned in the comments. Your next step is waiting right now. Before you close this video, come to the comments and tell us, what did you feel? What shifted? We read every single response. And if this teaching found you today, subscribe to this channel. Every week we go deeper into the ancient frequency codes that were always meant to be yours. We are just scratching the surface of this ancient power. Get ready, because in our next video, I will reveal even deeper Aramaic codes that unlock spiritual authority you've never imagined. Make sure you are subscribed and have notifications turned on so you don't miss this unfolding revelation.